My name is Naledi, and I was just 9 years old when I lost both my parents. Life became a nightmare. I was bullied at school and treated badly by my aunt. At 19, I thought I'd found love with a rich boy, but when I got pregnant, he left me to suffer alone. Yet through all the pain, I learned that God has a purpose for everyone. This is my story of heartbreak, strength, and triumph. Let's watch it together.
Story together. The sun was setting over the dusty township of Soweto, painting the sky in shades of orange and deep red. 9-year-old Naledi Zungu sat on a small wooden stool outside her family's tiny tin-roofed house, watching the day come to an end. Her small hands clutched a worn-out teddy bear, her only real friend in the world. Just 2 weeks ago, everything had been different. Her mother would be cooking dinner, filling the tiny house with the warm smell of pap and meat stew. Her father would be coming home from work, his work boots heavy on the dirt path, his laugh loud and strong. But now, silence filled every corner of her world. The accident happened so quickly. A big truck, moving too fast on the rainy night, had crashed into their small car. Naledi remembered the phone call. The police officer's voice was soft but sad when he spoke to her aunt. "Both parents died instantly," he had said. Those words changed everything. Now, Naledi lived with her Aunt Miriam, her mother's older sister. Aunt Miriam was nothing like her mother. Where her mom had been warm and loving, Aunt Miriam was hard and bitter. She had 4 children of her own and saw Naledi as just another mouth to feed. "You're lucky we're taking you in," Aunt Miriam would say often. "No one else wanted to care for you after the accident." The words stung, but Naledi had learned to stay quiet. She was good at being invisible. At school, she sat at the back of the classroom, her eyes always looking down. The other children whispered about her. "The girl with no parents," they would say. Some were mean, pointing and laughing. Every morning, Naledi would help Aunt Miriam before going to school. She would wash dishes, clean the floor, and help prepare breakfast for her cousins. Her cousins would eat first, and she would get what was left. Sometimes that meant just a small piece of bread and a cup of weak tea. Her school uniform was always clean, but old. Her mother had always believed in looking neat, no matter how little money they had. Naledi would carefully wash and iron her uniform each night, making sure every crease was perfect. It was her way of keeping her mother's memory alive. At night, Naledi would lie on a thin mattress on the floor of the small bedroom she shared with her 2 younger cousins. She would hold her teddy bear and remember her parents. She remembered her father's strong hands, how he would lift her up and spin her around. She remembered her mother's soft singing, the way she would braid Naledi's hair every morning. The memories were both a comfort and a pain. They made her smile, but they also made her cry. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, she would wake up crying, calling for her mother. Her aunt would get angry. "Stop that noise," she would shout. "You're making the other children wake up." Naledi's school was a challenge. She was a quiet girl, always trying to stay unnoticed. Her grades were good, she was smart and worked hard. But being smart didn't protect her from the bullies. The other children could smell her sadness, her loneliness. "Orphan girl," they would whisper. "No mommy, no daddy." Some days were harder than others. During family day at school, when other children would come with their parents, Naledi would sit alone. She would watch the other kids laughing and playing, feeling like she was watching a world she could never be part of. But Naledi had a secret. Deep inside her small, hurt heart, she had hope. Her mother had always told her, "You are strong, my girl. You can survive anything." These words became her lifeline, her protection against the world's cruelty. She didn't know how, but she believed that one day things would get better. One day she would make her parents proud. One day she would have a life filled with love and happiness. For now she survived. She was quiet. She was careful. She was waiting for her moment. As the last rays of sunlight disappeared and darkness covered Soweto, Naledi hugged her teddy bear closer. Another day had ended. Another night of dreams and memories was about to begin. The school bell rang sharp at 7:30 in the morning. Naledi walked the long dusty road to Soweto Primary School, her backpack hanging loose on her thin shoulders. Every step was careful, every movement calculated to avoid drawing attention to herself. The school was a collection of old brick buildings with broken windows and faded paint. Some classrooms had holes in the walls, and the playground was more dirt than grass. But for Naledi, this was her escape from the hard life at home. Here, she could at least pretend to be just another student. Mrs. Mbatha, her fifth-grade teacher, was the first person who seemed to see something special in Naledi. She was an older woman with kind eyes and gray hair, pulled back in a tight bun. While other teachers ignored Naledi, Mrs. Mbatha would sometimes give her extra attention. But kindness was rare in Naledi's world. Themba Dlamini was the biggest bully in the school. He was a year older than most students in the class, held back twice because of his poor grades. At 12, he was already bigger than most of the teachers. His favorite target was Naledi. "Look at the orphan girl," Themba would say loudly during break time. "No one wants her. No parents, no family." The other children would laugh. Some would join in, throwing small stones or pieces of paper at her. Naledi learned to become invisible. She would sit alone during lunch, eating the small piece of bread her aunt had grudgingly packed for her. Her clothes were always clean but worn. Her shoes had holes, but she would polish them every night to make them look presentable. Her uniform was always carefully pressed, a memory of her mother's teachings about always looking neat and respectable. In class, Naledi was different. While she was quiet and withdrawn during breaks, she became alive during lessons. Her hand would shoot up to answer questions. Her notebooks were always perfectly written, each page a testament to her intelligence and determination. Mrs. Mbatha noticed. One day, after a mathematics lesson where Naledi had solved a complex problem that stumped other students, the teacher kept her back after class. "You are very smart, Naledi," Mrs. Mbatha said softly. "Do not let anyone make you feel small." These words meant more to Naledi than the teacher could ever know. In a world that seemed determined to crush her spirit, someone had seen her potential. But school was not just about learning. It was a battlefield of survival. Themba and his friends would wait for her after classes. They would block her path, push her around, call her names. "Orphan, dirty girl, no one loves you," they would shout. Naledi learned to be quick. She learned to dodge, to run, to find hidden paths home. Some days she would take longer routes just to avoid Themba and his gang. Her aunt never asked about the bruises. She never inquired why Naledi sometimes came home with torn clothes or why she seemed so tired. To Aunt Miriam, Naledi was just another burden, another mouth to feed. At home, life was no better. Her cousins would mock her, copying the bullies from school. "Orphan girl," they would sing, knowing it would hurt her. Her aunt would do nothing, sometimes even joining in the cruel teasing. But Naledi had a secret weapon, her dreams. At night, she would imagine a different life. A life where she was successful, where she had a beautiful home, where people respected her. These dreams kept her going. She would study late into the night, using a small candle when the electricity was cut off. Mathematics, English, science, she devoured every book she could find. The school library became her sanctuary. Here, surrounded by books, she could escape the harsh reality of her life. Mrs. Mbatha saw potential in Naledi that others missed. She would sometimes give Naledi extra study materials, old textbooks that other students had discarded. "Knowledge is the key to a better life," she would tell Naledi. As the school year progressed, Naledi's resilience grew. She learned to fight back, not with fists but with intelligence. When Themba would try to make fun of her, she would respond with sharp, smart answers that would leave him speechless. Her survival was a daily battle. A battle against poverty, against bullies, against a world that seemed determined to keep her down. But Naledi was determined. She would not be defeated. Every night, before sleeping on her thin mattress, she would look at the small photo of her parents she kept hidden. "I will make you proud," she would whisper. "I will survive." And survive she would. Simple, engaging language. 10 years had passed since Naledi's difficult childhood. At 19, she worked 2 jobs to support herself. A waitress during the day at a small restaurant in Johannesburg, and a part-time seamstress in the evenings. Her dreams of a better life never died, even though life continued to challenge her at every turn. The restaurant where she worked was located in a busy neighborhood, a place where people from all walks of life would come and go. Businessmen in suits, workers in uniforms, students and families. Naledi served them all with a quiet grace that caught people's attention. Thabo Mkizi first noticed her on a busy Wednesday afternoon. He was different from the usual customers. Expensive watch, designer clothes, a BMW parked outside. When he walked in, the entire restaurant seemed to change. His presence demanded attention. At first, Naledi tried to be invisible, just as she had learned to do in school. But Thabo was persistent. He would come to the restaurant almost every day, always asking to be seated in her section. His smile was charming, his eyes kind, something Naledi had rarely experienced in her life. "What's your name?" he asked one day, his voice smooth and warm. "Naledi," she replied softly, avoiding direct eye contact. Thabo was different from anyone Naledi had ever met. He came from a wealthy family. His father owned several mining companies, and his mother was a well-known socialite. But something about Naledi intrigued him. She was different from the girls in his usual social circle. Quiet, hardworking, with a dignity that seemed to shine through her worn-out uniform. Their conversation started small. A joke here, a kind word there. Naledi found herself looking forward to his visits. For the first time in her life, someone seemed genuinely interested in her. Months passed, and their friendship grew. Thabo would wait for her after work, offering her rides home in his expensive car. He would buy her small gifts, a book, a nice meal, a new jacket. Things Naledi could never afford for herself. Her aunt was suspicious. "Be careful," she would warn. "Rich boys like him don't marry girls like you." But Naledi was falling in love. Thabo made her feel special. He talked about her dreams, listened to her stories, and made her believe that anything was possible. Their first real date happened on a warm summer evening. Thabo took her to a fancy restaurant, the kind of place Naledi had only seen in movies. She wore a simple dress, carefully borrowed and mended, but Thabo looked at her like she was the most beautiful woman in the world. "You're different," he would tell her. "You're not like other girls." Love came quickly, passionately. Naledi believed she had finally found her escape from the hard life she had known. Thabo represented everything she had dreamed of. Kindness, protection, a way out of poverty. Their physical relationship followed naturally. Naledi was innocent but passionate. Thabo was experienced and gentle. She believed this was her chance at happiness, her moment of transformation. But life had other plans. The pregnancy came as a shock. When Naledi told Thabo, his reaction was not what she expected. The warmth in his eyes changed. The kindness disappeared. "You must get rid of it," he said coldly one evening. They were sitting in his car, parked away from the busy streets of Johannesburg. Naledi was stunned. "Get rid of what?" "The baby," Thabo said. "My family cannot know about this. My parents will destroy me if they find out." The world seemed to stop. This man who had promised her love, who had made her believe in a different life, was now asking her to end the life growing inside her. But Naledi was no longer the scared little girl from the township. Years of struggle had made her strong. Years of survival had given her a backbone of steel. "No," she said simply, "I will keep my child." Thabo's face changed. The kind lover disappeared, replaced by a cold, calculating man she had never seen before. "You don't understand what you're doing," he warned her. "My family will not accept this." Little did Naledi know, this was just the beginning of a battle that would define her entire life. The Mkizi family was powerful, respected, and they would do anything to protect their reputation. Her pregnancy would become a war between love, survival, and social expectations. And Naledi was ready to fight. The moment the Mkizi family learned about Naledi's pregnancy, their world turned upside down. Mrs. Eunice Mkizi, Thabo's mother, was a woman known for her iron will and social connections. Her husband, Robert Mkizi, was a powerful mining magnate who had built his fortune through years of careful networking and ruthless business practices. Their first response was anger, pure burning rage. "How dare you?" Eunice screamed at Thabo during a private family meeting. The living room of their massive Santon mansion was tense, with expensive artwork and crystal decorations watching silently. Robert Mkizi sat in his leather chair, his face like stone. "You will not destroy our family's reputation," he said quietly. His quiet voice was more terrifying than any shouting. Thabo stood between his parents, looking defeated. He had always been the golden child, educated, well-dressed, expected to take over the family business. Now, he had brought home a girl from the township who was pregnant with his child. The plan was simple. They would make Naledi disappear. Their first attempt was subtle. Eunice began calling Naledi's workplace, spreading rumors. She would call the restaurant manager, hinting at Naledi's unstable character. Within weeks, Naledi lost her waitressing job. But Naledi was stronger than they expected. She found another job quickly. Working as a kitchen assistant in a small catering company, her determination was something the Mkiza family had not anticipated. Their attacks became more direct. One hot Saturday afternoon, Eunice Mkize drove to Naledi's township. She was dressed in an expensive white outfit, looking completely out of place among the small tin houses and dusty streets. Her driver waited in the expensive Mercedes while she approached Naledi's aunt's house. "You control your niece," Eunice told Aunt Miriam, sliding an envelope full of cash across the table. "Make her get rid of the child. Make her go away." Aunt Miriam, always hungry for money, listened carefully. But Naledi's aunt knew her niece was stubborn. This would not be easy. The Mkize family's attacks became more aggressive. They hired private investigators to dig into Naledi's background. They wanted dirt, anything they could use to destroy her reputation. But Naledi had nothing to hide. Her life was an open book of survival and hard work. Every moment was about moving forward, about creating a better life for herself and the child growing inside her. The township became a battleground. Rumors spread. People would whisper when Naledi walked by. "Look at the girl who is pregnant by a rich man," they would say. "She thinks she can change her life." But Naledi held her head high. The Mkize family's next move was more direct. They began to physically intimidate her. Multiple times, strange men would follow her. They would drive slowly beside her as she walked, making threatening comments. One evening, they poured dirty water on her doorstep. Another time, they threw garbage in front of her house. The message was clear: they wanted her gone. Thabo disappeared from her life. No calls, no messages. It was as if he had been completely erased. Naledi's pregnancy became difficult. The stress, the constant fear, the financial struggle, all of it weighed heavily on her. But she had a secret weapon: hope. Every night, she would talk to her unborn child. "We will survive," she would say, rubbing her growing belly. "We are strong." Her aunt became a reluctant ally. The money from the Mkize family combined with Naledi's determination meant they could survive. But the tension was always there. The community watched. Some supported Naledi, seeing her as a symbol of resistance. Others judged her, believing she was trying to trap a rich man. But Naledi knew the truth. She was fighting for survival, fighting for her child, fighting for a future that nobody believed she could have. As her pregnancy progressed, the Mkize family's attacks became more desperate. They knew she would not go away. They knew she was determined to have this child. Robert Mkize made one final attempt. He sent a lawyer to Naledi's home, offering her a settlement, a large sum of money to disappear, to go away and never contact Thabo again. Naledi's response was simple and powerful. "No," she said. "I will keep my child." The battle lines were drawn. The Mkize family versus a young woman from the township. A war that would define the next chapter of their lives. And Naledi was ready to fight with everything she had. The Johannesburg General Hospital was a place of chaos and hope. On a rainy Tuesday morning, Naledi arrived with her aunt, her contractions growing stronger with each passing minute. The public ward was crowded, with women in various stages of labor, filling the room with sounds of pain and anticipation. Naledi was alone, but she was not afraid. The past months of struggle had prepared her for this moment. Her body, hardened by years of hard work and survival, was ready to bring life into the world. The hospital staff looked at her with a mixture of pity and judgment. A young girl, pregnant and alone, was not an uncommon sight. But Naledi was different. Her eyes burned with a determination that set her apart from the other patients. Hours passed. The pain was intense, but Naledi remained strong. She thought of her parents, gone too soon. She thought of the child growing inside her, a symbol of hope and survival. Each contraction was a battle, and she was determined to win. At 3:47 in the afternoon, Themba was born. The moment the nurse placed him in her arms, Naledi's world changed. He was small, with tiny fingers and a loud cry that seemed to challenge the entire world. His skin was dark and smooth, his eyes bright and alert, just like his mother. "Themba," she whispered, "my fighter." The name meant hope in Zulu. And hope was exactly what this child represented. But the Mkize family was not finished. Their plan to eliminate Naledi and her child was about to enter its most dangerous phase. The first attempt came just days after Themba's birth. A group of men, rough-looking, clearly hired, approached Naledi as she walked home from the clinic with her newborn son. It was a quiet afternoon. The township streets were mostly empty, the heat making everyone seek shelter. Naledi was tired, carrying Themba in a small cloth wrap against her chest. Her aunt had given her some money to buy baby supplies, and she was carefully counting her coins. The men approached slowly, 3 of them, looking like they had been drinking, but their movements were too calculated to be random. These were not drunk men, these were predators. "Hey girl," the first man called. His voice was low, threatening. Naledi's survival instincts kicked in immediately. She had learned long ago how to read danger. Her body became alert, her mind racing. "We have a message for you," the second man said, moving closer. But Naledi was no longer the scared child from her past. She was a mother now. And mothers can become the most dangerous creatures when their children are threatened. She reached into her small bag, pulling out a sharp piece of metal she always carried for protection. Her eyes scanned the street. An old woman was watching from a doorway. A young boy was playing with a bicycle nearby. "Stay back," Naledi said. Her voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. The men laughed, but their laughter was forced. They could see something different in Naledi's eyes. This was not a victim. This was a warrior. The first man lunged forward, but Naledi was ready. She had learned to fight, not with strength, but with strategy. She moved sideways, using the man's own momentum against him. He stumbled, nearly falling. Themba began to cry. The sound was like a fire burning inside Naledi. Her protection instinct exploded. She struck fast. The metal piece in her hand caught the first man's arm. Not enough to seriously wound, but enough to make him step back in shock. The street was not empty anymore. People were watching. The old woman had come closer. The boy with the bicycle was staring. "The Mkize family sends a message," the second man said. But his confidence was gone. Naledi's response was simple. "Tell them I'm not afraid." The men retreated, but Naledi knew this was just the beginning. That night, she made a decision. She would not be a victim. She would not let the Mkize family destroy her or her son. She began to plan. Her skills as a seamstress would become her first weapon. She would work. She would save money. She would create a life for Themba that nobody could take away. The clinic where Themba was born became another battleground. Rumors spread that the Mkize family had connections even here. Nurses would look at her strangely. Administrators would make her wait longer than other mothers. But Naledi was patient. She was careful. She documented everything. Her aunt, usually harsh and critical, began to see something different in her niece. Naledi was changing. The scared girl was becoming a strong woman. "They think they can break me," Naledi would say, looking down at Themba. "But they don't know who I am." Themba became her reason, her motivation. Every difficult moment was faced with the thought of giving her son a better life. She started taking night classes. She learned about business. She practiced her English. She studied mathematics. Every moment not spent working or caring for Themba was a moment spent preparing for their future. The Mkize family watched. They knew Naledi was not going to disappear. They knew she was building something they had not anticipated. A storm was coming, and Naledi was preparing to weather it. Themba's cries filled the tiny kitchen as Naledi carefully rocked him with one hand while threading a needle with the other. It was another sleepless night, but for Naledi, rest was a luxury she couldn't afford. Her dreams were too big, her determination too fierce. In those quiet hours, under the dim glow of a flickering bulb, she began laying the foundation for her future. Naledi had always been resourceful. With no formal training and only the remnants of her mother's sewing kit, she started repairing and altering clothes for neighbors. Her stitches were precise, her designs creative. Word spread quickly across the township. If you wanted your clothes to look good, you went to Naledi. Soon, small orders turned into a steady flow of work. Every penny she earned went into supplies, fabric scraps, needles, thread, and Themba's care. By day, she worked in a catering company, scrubbing pots and slicing vegetables for meager pay. By night, She poured her heart into sewing, often falling asleep at her machine with Themba nestled beside her. It was during one of these long nights that Marcus walked into her life. A tall, well-dressed man with a warm smile and an air of quiet confidence, he owned a fabric shop in a nearby suburb. Marcus had heard about the young seamstress, creating magic from scraps, and wanted to see her work for himself. He found Naledi hunched over her sewing machine, the hum of the motor almost drowning out Themba's soft coos. She looked up, startled, as he entered the cramped space. "Are you Naledi?" he asked, his voice calm and kind. She nodded, her fingers still working the fabric under the needle. "Who's asking?" "Marcus Tlamini. I run a fabric shop in town." He held out a business card. "I've heard good things about you." Naledi hesitated. She wasn't used to strangers showing interest in her work, especially not someone who looked like he belonged in Santon rather than Soweto. But Marcus was different. He didn't look at her with pity or judgment, just genuine curiosity. He picked up a half-finished dress from the table. "This is impressive," he said, admiring the clean lines and intricate details. "Where did you learn to sew like this?" "My mother taught me," Naledi replied quietly, her voice tinged with both pride and sorrow. "She believed a woman should always have a skill." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "You've got talent. With the right materials, you could do even more." That meeting marked the beginning of a partnership that would change Naledi's life. Marcus became more than just a supplier. He became a mentor and a friend. He offered her discounted fabric and introduced her to clients who could afford to pay more for her work. With his help, Naledi's small business began to grow. She started designing school uniforms, wedding dresses, and even casual wear for women in the township. Her creations were simple but elegant, each piece reflecting the resilience and beauty of its maker. Clients came not just for the clothes, but for the inspiration she embodied. Meanwhile, her job at the catering company provided another unexpected opportunity. The head chef, a stern woman named Mrs. Molfi, noticed Naledi's keen eye for detail and natural talent in the kitchen. One day, after a particularly busy shift, Mrs. Molfi pulled Naledi aside. "You're wasted on dish duty," she said bluntly. "Come to the kitchen tomorrow. I'll teach you how to cook properly." From that day forward, Naledi juggled 2 apprenticeships, learning the art of cooking during the day and mastering the craft of sewing at night. Her days were long and exhausting, but each skill she acquired brought her closer to the life she envisioned for herself and Themba. The community began to take notice. Women admired her strength, her determination to rise above her circumstances. Even those who had once mocked her began to show respect. Naledi was no longer just the girl who had gotten pregnant by a rich man. She was becoming a force to be reckoned with. But success didn't come without challenges. The Mkize family wasn't done with her. Rumors started spreading, ugly lies meant to tarnish her reputation and scare away her clients. Anonymous threats would appear at her door, warning her to leave Johannesburg. Naledi didn't flinch. She had faced worse in her life, and she wasn't about to back down now. Themba was her anchor, her reason to keep fighting. Every night she would whisper to him, "One day, we'll have a home of our own. One day, you'll be proud of your mother." As the months turned into years, Naledi's small business flourished. Her sewing expanded into fashion design, and her cooking skills led to catering opportunities for local events. With Marcus's guidance, she began saving money and dreaming bigger. By the time Themba was 3, Naledi had opened her first small shop, a humble space where she sold handmade clothes and offered tailoring services. The sign above the door read, "Naledi Creations," a testament to her journey from despair to hope. For the first time in her life, Naledi felt a sense of security. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was building a future. And though the shadows of her past still loomed, she knew she had the strength to face whatever came next. Naledi's life had always been a battle, but nothing could have prepared her for the heartbreak that came when Themba, her greatest source of hope and joy, fell gravely ill. At just 5 years old, Themba's vibrant laughter and curious nature were replaced by constant fatigue and a pale complexion that alarmed everyone around him. At the time, Naledi was 25 and steadily growing her business. Her small tailoring shop had begun attracting clients from outside the township. Local events were requesting her catering services, and she had finally started saving for a proper home for her and Themba. She often worked late into the night, determined to give her son a life filled with opportunities she never had. But then came the whispers in the community. "The boy is always tired," one woman said, shaking her head. Another added, "He used to play so much. What happened to him?" Naledi dismissed the comments at first, attributing Themba's weakness to the flu or exhaustion from playing too hard. But as weeks turned into months and his condition worsened, her denial turned into dread. Themba began losing weight, his once bright eyes dulled, and his energy vanished entirely. She took him to a small clinic in the township, the same place where he had been born. The nurse's concerned expression deepened as she examined Themba, and Naledi's heart pounded with fear. "You'll need to take him to a hospital in the city," the nurse said quietly. "We don't have the equipment to diagnose him here." The journey to Johannesburg General Hospital was long and grueling. Naledi carried Themba in her arms, his small frame feeling far too light. He rested his head on her shoulder, his breath shallow but calm. Every step felt like walking through quicksand, her mind racing with the possibilities of what could be wrong. When the doctor finally delivered the diagnosis, it felt like the ground beneath her had vanished. Themba had leukemia, a word Naledi barely understood but knew enough to fear. The doctor explained that treatment would require expensive medication, hospital visits, and most likely chemotherapy. Naledi's world crumbled. She had fought so hard to create a better life for Themba, and now it seemed as if everything she had worked for was slipping through her fingers. The cost of treatment was astronomical, far beyond what her small businesses could afford. But giving up was never an option. Naledi threw herself into finding ways to pay for Themba's care. She took on extra sewing orders, catering gigs, and cleaning jobs, often working 20 hours a day. Marcus, her mentor and friend, stepped in to help, lending her money and connecting her with people who could contribute to Themba's medical bills. Despite her relentless efforts, the strain took its toll on Naledi. Her once bright eyes became heavy with exhaustion, and her hands, calloused from sewing, ached constantly. Yet, every time she looked at Themba, she found the strength to keep going. For a while, it seemed like Themba was improving. The treatments helped, and he began to regain some of his energy. His laughter returned, faint but present, and Naledi clung to the hope that he might survive this battle. But fate had other plans. One cold, rainy evening, as Naledi sat by Themba's hospital bed, his small hand clutching hers, the machines around him began to beep erratically. Nurses rushed in, their faces tense with urgency. Naledi was pushed aside as they worked to stabilize him, her heart pounding in her chest. Hours later, the doctor emerged with a somber expression. "I'm sorry, Naledi," he said softly. "We did everything we could." Naledi collapsed into the chair, her body racked with sobs. Themba, her hope, her reason for fighting, was gone. The grief was suffocating, a heavy weight that threatened to crush her entirely. For weeks she existed in a haze of pain and numbness, barely able to function. But slowly, as the days turned into months, a spark began to reignite within her. Themba had been her light, and though he was gone, his memory would guide her. At 26, Naledi vowed to honor her son's legacy by becoming the person he would have been proud of. She channeled her grief into her work, expanding her businesses and using her growing success to help other struggling mothers in the township. Themba's death was a wound that would never fully heal, but it became the catalyst for Naledi's transformation. She was no longer just a survivor. She was a fighter, a builder, and a woman determined to create a legacy that would outlast even the deepest shadows of her past. Themba's death left a void that could never be filled, but it also ignited a fire in Naledi that burned brighter than ever. She buried her grief deep within her heart, channeling it into her work and dreams. Her sewing business, once a small operation in the corner of her aunt's veranda, began to grow into something remarkable. Word of Naledi's talent spread far beyond Soweto. Clients from wealthier neighborhoods started to take notice of the young designer who could create elegant, custom pieces at a fraction of the price charged by upscale boutiques. Marcus, ever the strategist, helped her secure better fabric and introduced her to influential buyers. Nalady's tailoring shop transformed into a modest storefront. The walls were lined with colorful fabrics, and mannequins displayed her latest designs. It wasn't grand, but it was hers, a symbol of how far she had come. The catering business grew alongside her clothing line. Nalady's passion for food, nurtured during her years working as a kitchen assistant, turned into a thriving side venture. She took on small events at first, birthday parties, church gatherings, but soon her reputation for flavorful, beautifully presented dishes attracted larger clients. Her determination was relentless. She worked long hours, often sewing late into the night after catering events. Despite her success, she remained humble, reinvesting every penny into her businesses. Her focus was singular, to build a legacy that would honor Themba's memory. The community began to rally around her. People who had once whispered about her now spoke of her with admiration. Women saw her as a symbol of resilience and strength. She became a source of inspiration, proof that one could rise above even the most devastating circumstances. But her success did not go unnoticed by the Meji's family. Watching the lady's ascent from a distance, they could no longer ignore the woman they had tried so hard to crush. Whispers reached Eunice Mkizi's ears about a young designer whose creations were becoming a staple in high society events. "She's gaining influence," Eunice muttered to her husband during one of their lavish dinner parties. Her voice was sharp, her eyes narrowing as she considered the implications. "She's no threat to us," Robert replied dismissively, swirling a glass of expensive wine. But Eunice wasn't convinced. Nalady's success, however small in comparison to their empire, was a reminder of their failure to erase her. Naledy remained focused, oblivious to their growing unease. Her businesses became intertwined with the community, employing young people and giving others a chance to rise alongside her. She had turned her pain into a purpose, and she wasn't stopping. The tide was shifting. What had once seemed like an insurmountable struggle was now a steady climb toward something greater. Naledy wasn't just surviving anymore, she was thriving. And though she didn't know it yet, her rise was setting the stage for a confrontation that would change everything. The sun hung low over Soweto, casting long shadows across the streets as Naledy closed her tailoring shop for the day. She had spent hours fitting garments and stitching intricate patterns, her focus sharp despite the weariness settling into her bones. Business booming, but the long days often left her too tired to do much more than collapse into bed. She locked the door, pausing to look at the sign above her shop, Naledy Creations. It wasn't flashy, but it represented her journey, a testament to her resilience. As she turned to leave, a sleek black car pulled up to the curb. Its polished surface reflected the fading light, and the driver's door opened with a quiet click. Her heart stopped when she saw him. Thabo Mkizi stepped out of the car, his tailored suit fitting him like a second skin. He had aged gracefully, his confidence as palpable as ever. The same man who had once filled her heart with love and later crushed it stood before her, looking as if the years had been kind to him. "Naledy," he said, his voice smooth, almost hesitant. She didn't respond immediately. Her grip tightened on the keys in her hand as she fought to control the wave of emotions threatening to overwhelm her. Anger, disbelief, and a faint echo of something she didn't want to name all swirled within her. "What are you doing here, Thabo?" she asked finally, her tone sharp but steady. He took a step closer, his hands raised as if to show he meant no harm. "I heard about your success. I wanted to see you. To talk." Naledy scoffed, folding her arms across her chest. "You wanted to see me now that I'm successful? Where were you when I needed you? When our son needed you?" Her words cut through the air like a blade, and for a moment, Thabo's confident facade faltered. His gaze dropped to the ground, and he sighed heavily. "I know I made mistakes," he admitted, his voice softer now. "I was a coward. I let my family dictate my actions, and I hurt you in ways I'll never be able to fix. But I've changed, Naledy." She laughed bitterly, shaking her head. "You think you can just show up here and apologize? That it will erase everything?" "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he said quickly. "I just want a chance to make things right. To help you, if you'll let me." Naledy stared at him, her mind racing. This was the same man who had abandoned her when she was at her lowest, who had allowed his family to humiliate and threaten her. And yet, here he was, standing before her, claiming to have changed. Help me? She repeated, her voice dripping with skepticism. I don't need your help, Thabo. I built this life without you, without anyone's pity. He nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. I see that, and I'm proud of you, but I also know the kind of battles you fought. Let me. No, she interrupted, her tone firm. You don't get to waltz back into my life and play the hero. You made your choice, Thabo, and I made mine. Thabo's shoulders slumped slightly, but he didn't push further. I just wanted to see you, Naledi, to see the woman you've become. You're remarkable. She turned away, her chest tightening. His words stirred something inside her, but she refused to let him see it. Goodbye, Thabo, she said quietly, walking away without looking back. As she disappeared into the fading light, Thabo stood by his car, watching her go. For the first time in years, he felt the weight of his actions bearing down on him. He had lost something extraordinary, and he knew it might be too late to make amends. But he wasn't ready to give up just yet. Naledi thought the encounter with Thabo was behind her. She had brushed it off, focusing instead on her work and the steady rise of her businesses. But the Mkizi family wasn't done with her, not by a long shot. Eunice Mkizi sat in the expansive living room of their Santon mansion, a place of luxury and power. The walls were adorned with art that cost more than most people earned in a year. She sat on a velvet chaise, her sharp eyes scanning the papers spread out before her. Reports, photographs, and financial documents, all about Naledi Zungu. Her lips pressed into a thin line as she read about Naledi's growing influence. The young woman's name was appearing more and more in social circles. Her designs were being worn by society's elite, and her catering business had recently been hired for a high-profile charity gala. Naledi was no longer a poor township girl. She was building a name for herself, and Eunice hated it. She's becoming a nuisance, Eunice said aloud, her voice cutting through the room. Her husband, Robert, looked up from his tablet, unimpressed. Let her be, Eunice. She's not a threat to us. She's a threat to our reputation, Eunice snapped. People are starting to associate her with Thabo. Do you want our family name tied to some girl who clawed her way out of a shack? Robert shrugged. She's doing well for herself, let it go. But Eunice couldn't let it go. The mere thought of Naledi's success made her blood boil. Years ago, she had worked tirelessly to erase that girl from their lives, and yet here she was, flourishing. No, Eunice said, standing up abruptly. We need to remind her of her place. She began making phone calls, her mind racing with plans. First, she contacted a powerful socialite who was hosting an upcoming gala Naledi was catering. Subtly, Eunice suggested that the young businesswoman's reputation might not be as clean as it seemed. She's new money, Eunice said smoothly, her tone dripping with disdain. I've heard some troubling rumors. Just thought you should know. The socialite, eager to remain in Eunice's good graces, promised to look into it. Next, Eunice arranged a meeting with a local supplier who provided materials for Naledi's tailoring business. Using her connections, she pressured him to delay shipments and increase prices, knowing it would disrupt Naledi's operations. By the end of the day, Eunice had sown enough seeds of doubt and chaos to make Naledi's life considerably harder. She smiled to herself, satisfied. But Naledi wasn't the same vulnerable girl Eunice had once tormented. When the socialite called to cancel the catering contract, citing unexpected changes, Naledi didn't panic. She pivoted, using her growing network to secure an even bigger client, a prominent entrepreneur hosting a launch event. When her supplier delayed shipments, she found an alternative, sourcing fabrics from a new distributor Marcus had introduced her to. The challenges only made her more determined, her resilience honed by years of survival. One evening, Marcus visited her shop, bringing coffee and updates about the new distributor. As they talked, he noticed the tension in her shoulders. Something's bothering you, he said, his tone gentle. Naledi hesitated before answering. It's the Mkizes, she admitted. I can feel their shadow over everything I do. They're trying to push me back into the dirt. Marcus frowned. They're powerful, yes, but so are you. Don't let them intimidate you. I'm not afraid of them, Naledi replied firmly. I've come too far to be brought down now, but I won't lie. It's exhausting. Marcus placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You're not alone in this. You've built something incredible, Naledi. Don't forget that. His words bolstered her, and she returned to work with renewed focus. If the Makizas wanted a fight, she was ready. Meanwhile, Thabo watched the growing tension from the sidelines. He had always been aware of his mother's ruthless tactics, but seeing them aimed at Naledi stirred something in him. Guilt, regret, and a sense of responsibility he couldn't ignore. For the first time in years, Thabo confronted Eunice. "Leave her alone," he demanded, his voice uncharacteristically firm. Eunice raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "You don't tell me what to do, Thabo. I'm protecting this family." "Protecting us from what?" Thabo shot back. "Naledi is building her own life. She's not your enemy." Eunice's expression hardened. "She's a reminder of your mistakes. Do you want people to know that you fathered a child with that girl? Do you want that stain on our family name?" Thabo's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He knew arguing with Eunice was futile. She was determined to crush Naledi, no matter the cost. As he left the room, his mind churned with conflicting emotions. He wanted to protect Naledi, but he also knew that going against his family could have consequences he wasn't prepared to face. Naledi, however, wasn't waiting for anyone to save her. She had weathered Eunice's schemes before, and she would do it again. With every setback, she grew stronger, her resolve unshakable. The storm was building, and this time, Naledi was ready to face it head-on,